Yes, hello everybody, and thank you for coming. We wanted, with regarding to the endurance, we wanted to have a press conference already yesterday, but we wanted really to be in a position to provide you with all the facts and the detailed data. So also there was an appeal, and we wanted to wait for the outcome of the appeal that was lodged by the Spanish team, and we are now in a better position to having all this information. Not everything is yet compiled, but we wanted not to let you wait any longer. First of all, with regarding to the start, as you know, some teams were misdirected at the start of the ride, and we need to have a full understanding of what exactly happened. So we have put in place immediately an investigation. There are here in Tryon on the side 2 members of the independent Equestrian Community Integrity Unit, and they are conducting a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding this, and we will make these findings public once the FEI Bureau has seen the report. So that's one. Then with regarding to the cancellation of the ride, it was in one way, of course, a very difficult decision to take, because we know that the athletes and the horses have trained for such a long time and so hard, and they have traveling such a long way to compete here. And we also know the incredible work that the organizing committee has put in place, and the course designer, Sue Phillips, and Molly Oakman and her team to make this ride happen, and this fantastic, beautiful track to realize it. And so that's a hard decision. But to be honest, on the other hand, it was also an easy decision, because I believe that the grand jury and the veterinary commission, they have the responsibility to monitor how the horses are going, and they have the responsibility for the entire group of the horses, and not just the elite ones. And I can understand the frustration of the athletes, really. It's really a hard decision for them, and of course unpopular. But I think our sports, our officials, they have saved our sport. They put really horse welfare on the first place. And this is, as you know, our priority. We have been maybe criticized a lot in the past for this, and I think during the ride it was proven that horse welfare is our top priority. Because as soon as we saw that the scientific climate data came in, and we saw the clinical signs of the horses that were presented at the vet gate, we called immediately an emergency meeting with the president of the ground jury, the technical delegate, the veterinarians, and the organizers, and then the decision was to stop the ride. Of course, the official data of the competition is still validated, and it takes some time, but it's absolutely vital that the process is done correctly, as they are used to trigger also the mandatory rest periods, and the rest periods will apply according to the rules, Article 115.3, based on the distance covered, plus any additional days for lameness, metabolical issues, treatment, and the history of the horse. So then, so that's with regard to the cancellation of the competition. Again, for me personally, also a fully supported decision. It was really in the interest of our sport and in the interest of the welfare of the horses. Regarding the appeal, so there was an appeal lodged by the Spanish team, and they asked basically to award medals to the leading riders and teams when the competition was cancelled, of course. So the appeal was dealt with by a 3-person appeal committee yesterday, and this appeal committee is here in Tryon. And the decision was notified earlier today, and is to uphold the ground jury's decision that no medals will be presented. Of course, the ride was cancelled, before, and it's really important, before any horse or any athlete have covered the full distance and passed the final fetch. So the appeal committee validated or confirmed the validity of the official's decision to cancel the competition. So maybe I would like to invite first our FEI veterinary director, Equestrian, to give a little bit of an explanation about the situation.
Thank you, Ingmar. As always, all horses that started in the official competition went through a first horse inspection by FEI vets, where they determined if these horses were fit to compete. 15 horses were actually not allowed to continue from this first horse inspection, and they did not start in the 120 kilometer ride. Further to those, there were another 4 horses withdrawn. They passed the vet check, but they were withdrawn before the start. So in total, we had 95 starters for the 120 kilometers ride. So I would like to introduce Thomas Timmons to explain more about the ride and the decisions that were taken.
Thank you. As the President of the Veterinary Commission, along with my foreign veterinary delegates, during the competition, our monitoring of the horses and our witnessing of the difficulties in terms of metabolic recoveries, in addition to the climate conditions, heat, humidity, the lack of wind, in particular as related to the wet blow WBGT index, as they say, hitting easily 31 and above. But under those circumstances, as well as the trail conditions causing these horses to have an increased amount of exertion, it was very clear to us that it was the correct time to stop the competition. And it was part of our advice to the rest of the organizing, the officials as we meet. All this knowing full well the implications and the consequences, but welfare being the #1 circumstance, without question.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard that my colleague has. Sorry, Jan.
I regret to inform that we just have received information from the veterinary services manager that one horse owner has elected, in consultation with the veterinarians at Tryon Equestrian Hospital, to euthanize a horse following the competition. This horse had been treated for kidney problems here on site and then transferred to the Tryon Equestrian Hospital. And the FEI will issue a statement shortly on that tragic happening.
Thank you, Joran. We are now going to throw it open to the floor. My colleague has got a microphone there. Can I please ask you, before you ask your question, if you could identify yourself and the media outlet for whom you are working. So can I take the lady here, Jemima, if you'd like to come down to the front here, please? And I'm trying. Just there behind there.
Would it be possible for us, the media, to get first of all a proper exact results until the moment of the cancellation? Who was still in the race? How was the provisional placing of that time? Who was taken out and for what reasons?
As I said in my introduction, we will provide that information as soon as it is definitely validated. And again, it takes some time. Because it's really important that the information there is correct, because this will be determining the rest periods, but we will get it quite soon.
Thank you. There's this journalist here, please.
Ann Lawman, Chronicle of the Horse. We've spoken with some riders, and there was some feeling among them that the ride was canceled. Yes, the weather was hot, but some horses were still going strong. There were still 50 horses in the race, and they said it was more an issue that some people were riding irresponsibly or too quickly, and their horses had to be put in the vet care. But they feel that the race would have continued, and that's why there was so much emotion and kind of upset people at the end of the race. What is your guys' feeling on both how riders handled the race being called off and the sentiment that it could have gone on and that there were still healthy horses that were handling the trail line and could have completed?
At the vet gate where the stop was to be put in place, there were over 53 horses at that time that basically were sent to metabolic. That's an unprecedented number. Yes, there were some elite horses that were present. We have no mechanism to stop slow horses or horses that are in trouble other than the veterinary parameters, which is what was happening. That was our job. But in terms of those who still may have been able to continue the competition, regardless, the conditions were extreme enough that, frankly, you have to consider the risk, and the risk was not worth it.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
I think also important to add to that, I mean, we need to take care of all the horses that are in the race and not only the elite ones. And the decision was based upon several parameters. So it was this development of the humidity during the race, because we had a certain moment, as you remember, we had a big shower and followed with quite a hot, sunny situation. And we saw that where in the prognosis that we made in the past about the evolution of the humidity, that around 4 o'clock it needs to go down. And what we saw at that time was that it went up, and it went up to quite a critical level. So that was one of the parameters also to make the decision, together with the fact that the track was becoming very slippery. To that fact, horses needed to compensate a lot and had to use much more energy than they usually should use to make such, which led to tired horses like the person.
Okay, question here, then there, and then the gentleman in the white will come to you.
So Kim Landin from Ride News Sweden, a veterinary question, and the second one about club.
Because there are other people who...
I know you can't give us the stats of each horse, but how many went into treatment in the veterinary clinic?
53 horses went into treatment in veterinary clinic. 52 of those were metabolics. 32 of those needed fluid, intravenous fluids, 20 to 40 liters to recover. Some of these horses also had myopathy, which could have shown as lameness for any spectator, but when you check the blood values, you see that it's actually also a metabolic problem, or even more a metabolic problem. There were 2 mild colics that recovered quite quickly, and then we had a horse with kidney problems, and actually one that came back the following day with kidney problems.
Okay, thank you. So,
Pamela Young, International Alliance of Equestrian Journalists. I have 2 questions. One was...
could you limit it to just one of them? Because there's an awful lot of people who would like to ask questions.
They're both related.
Okay.
How, where, and how many horses were misdirected? How did that happen? And the second part of the question is, how many people were given incorrect behavior cards or warnings after the event?
So the first, to answer your first question, this is exactly what we are now investigating, what the confusion is, and that's why we have asked the Equestrian Integrity Unit to do this investigation, and they are currently do that. We cannot be at all places during such an event. Personally, I was at the starting gate. I think I saw only around 40 horses starting, so there were 80 maybe on another part. So we are now interviewing all the relevant people, officials, stewards, athletes, teams, to understand what their version is of the facts in order to have a full understanding of where the confusion came from. So that is in process. With regarding to sanctions, There haven't been any yet, but also there we need to understand it needs to be done in a fair way, because there were some incidents left and right. We are assessing this, and if there needs to be further follow-up, then we will do that. But we also need to respect the rights of the defense, as you know, and to hear the people concerned and allow them also to give them version before we can finalize the process. Thank you.
The gentleman from
Thank you.